Good Wednesday evening, everybody. Today is the final day of July 31st, 2024. And here's your tropical update. We could be talking about Tropical Storm Debby by early next week or the later part of the upcoming weekend. A tropical wave that we've been watching for days is showing signs of starting to organize and strengthen just a little bit. This is a 24-hour loop of tropical satellite in the infrared filter. And you can see a flare up here of some convection over the last 12 hours or so, right over the center of where this tropical wave is located, heading towards Puerto Rico, likely passing just over to the north of that there and pushing off towards the west. National Hurricane Center still has this wave with 0% chance of development in 48 hours, but past that, that jumps up to 60%. This is no change from when we talked yesterday, still at a 60% odds of developing into the next named storm Debby within the next 7 days as it heads towards Florida, the eastern Gulf, or the southeast coast of the U.S. A lot is still up in the air this hour, and I'm going to show you big changes in the models just over the last 24 hours. Let's start with a model comparison of the two big-time global models, the European and the American. We're just going to play this right on out through the rest of the work week into the upcoming weekend. Now, what we're looking for here is a close center of circulation indicating a storm system developing, and we don't see any of it on the European or American right up through Saturday. We have to go out through around Sunday, early Monday, and here's the first indication from the GFS, the American model, honing in on the northeast Gulf of Mexico. Jump out a little bit farther, we see a strengthening system drifting into the panhandle of Florida by Monday night. One model run, the American. We go all the way out to Tuesday into Wednesday. Notice that the GFS model here keeps it in this general area for days. A slowdown of forward momentum and stalling potentially over the panhandle of Florida. Now, that's not a one-off. Many models have been showing that exact same thing in different areas of the coastline, heading towards landfall, slowing down and stalling 4 days. That's a little bit worrisome here. We still cannot pinpoint the strength, intensity, or location of it, but models consistently showing that in different locations is a bit odd. And then here's now the European showing some sort of development by the middle of next week. So the timeline has been getting drawn out longer as well, originally showing development by the end of this weekend, early next week. Now we're at the middle of next week for the European model here, and then as it drifts off to the north. So what's driving this system? Well, this wave right now. All models are pretty much in consensus here with a westerly trajectory for the next several days, thanks to a big area of high pressure, Bermuda high, driving it westwards. When that high begins to break down and the system begins to round the western fringe of the high pressure system, that's the question that needs to be answered. When does it start to take a turn to the north? At that point, how strong is it? The stronger the system, the quicker north it'll go. The weaker, the farther west it will track. So here's the consensus of our four other big global models. Okay, we still have the GFS and Euro in here. We've got the Icon and we've got the Canadian model as well. Notice a shift here from yesterday when we talked. A lot of them were off the southeast coastline. Now most are beginning to favor track farther to the west into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. This is not all that unusual because the system hasn't even developed yet. Models are trying to figure out where it may be, how strong it may be, without an actual center to initialize its model output from. So we've got these models kind of going all over the place. We've got two, the Icon and the CMC here, showing a movement potentially along the west coast of Florida, moving over Florida, and then re-emerging off the southeast coastline in the Atlantic there. And all of these, I will say, do show a slowing forward movement and a potential stalling situation, whether it be in the panhandle of Florida, over Georgia, or even up farther north into the Carolinas. So that's going to be very interesting to watch how this overall evolves in the coming days. But the system may very well develop early next week near Florida, whether it's on the west coast of Florida or the east coast. It's still way too early to tell until we get this thing to strengthen a little bit more. Needless to say, I think all of these areas in yellow need to monitor the forecast here as things play out. In the shorter term, going to be down through the Bahamas and Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. But eventually, by the end of the weekend and early next week, we may be talking potential impacts in the southeast U.S., Florida, or maybe even in the Gulf Coast states. So certainly got to keep an eye on this going forward. Now, here we are on July the 31st. We're right about at the beginning of a ramp up climatologically in tropical activity. August is much more active, typically, than July is. And then September is more active than August. As we get towards the peak in the middle of September, then we see a gradual ramp down going through the end of the season. So that's the latest on today's video. If you have any questions, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, X, or TikTok. I'll have another video for you tomorrow with any updates on the system, and we'll talk to you then.